पूरम पूरम है फोटो है
बहुत खराब
मलबा था ये वो बिल्कुल नहीं F-16 का वो जो मिसाइल गिरा है इसमें F-16 का कहाँ से होगा
हाँ मिसाइल वो तो नहीं
उनके पेश से ना कौन सी मिसाइल थी
एमआर
राजीव रंजन सर इस तरफ
हेलो लाइव लो ना फोन है क्या लाइव लो
We're going to stay with that visual, but it does seem like that press conference has ended. That was the evidence presented. It was a joint press conference from the three services, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. It is not usual that we see such a joint conference addressed, a joint media briefing by the Army, Navy and the Air Force. Just to go over what was said, the Air Force spoke first. They mentioned the fact that on the 27th of February, at about 10 o'clock, it was detected that a large package of Pakistan Air Force had breached India's airspace. They were flying at various levels. Indian Air Force responded promptly and in a timely fashion. We scrambled our Sukhoi, our MiGs and Mirages in response. The Pakistani Air Force was intercepted. The Pakistani aircraft then turned around. Their attack had been foiled. Pakistani Air Force was unable to cause any damage. They had been, and this is an interesting piece, they had been targeting specifically Indian military installations. One F-16 was shot down by the Indian Air Force. We, in process in this, we know, lost one MiG-21 Bison. The parachutes, the MiG-21 Bison pilot, Abhinandan, as we know, Wing Commander Abhinandan parachuted into the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The Air Force then went on to dismantle some of the claims that have been made by Pakistan as untruths or lies. They said that they initially said that 2 of our aircraft had been shot down. That is not true. The Pakistan side also said that no F-16s were used at all. That is again not true, and the evidence of which you can see on your screen right now. The piece that's being held up at this point is a piece of ammunition which we understand or we're being told is called an Amram. This Amram can only be loaded and flown on an F-16. The Air Force also saying that that every aircraft has an electronic signature, and the Air Force has the ability to tell what aircraft was flying, and they know that F-16s were in fact flying, and Pakistan had targeted our military installations, and that remains the most important part of that press conference. It also went on to say that the Air Force remains vigilant and is always ready for any sort of action that comes from Pakistan's side. The Army then spoke and said, in response to the counter-terror strike, starting the 26th of February, 5 p.m. and then through the night after that, there were constant ceasefire violations from the Pakistani side. It went on to the 27th of February, where Pakistan Air Force targeted military bases, brigade base, logistics, defense establishments. The Army maintains, we understand, strict vigil on the ground and in air defense, and it is constantly alert. It has, mechanized forces that are on standby, and despite the turn of events, and this was an interesting thing, the Army said that we are committed to peace in the region, and we will take action at anyone who disturbs the peace and who has, designs of enmity towards India. Navy then spoke and said the Navy has been deployed on high alert, on surface, under the sea and in the air, and it is prepared to give a response, a resolute response to Pakistan and any sort of intrusion that comes from Pakistan. At which point the press conference was opened to journalists who asked questions. They asked, for example, if the armed forces viewed Pakistan's action from the Pakistan Air Force as an act of war. That question, quite frankly, was not answered very clearly, and the evidence that you see on your screen was presented to the press. In the studio with me, Vinay Tiwari, even a very interesting press conference. Several, I mean, so the main points here, and there are smaller Easter eggs in tone that we can pick on, but the main point here was the fact that Pakistan did target military establishments, and our armed forces are on high alert. They remain on high alert in spite of the fact that Imran Khan has made what he calls a gesture of peace.
Yes, and I think they're dehyphenating the release of Wing Commander Abhinandan from the overall security situation. I think they've made it very clear that the only thing they said is they're happy that our officer is coming back, and they've left it at that. I mean, they haven't, this is unconnected according to the Indian Armed Forces at least. And that they will remain in the state of alertness, they will continue to remain vigilant. In fact, they even said something operationally small, but very significant. They even said that our mechanized units are on standby. Now that's
what does that mean?
Mechanized infantries are pretty, like, the army of course has an infantry division. They also have the artillery division. There is also a mechanized division, which is the heavy guns, the tanks, and so on and so forth. Now, if they've put that on standby, it's sending out a message that, listen, we are prepared to go the whole hog. And mechanized infantry is mobilized only during situations like this, when there is a very serious worry of a conflict.
You know, it's very interesting that the Navy was part of this press briefing, and India has an extremely powerful Navy that has in the past, in the history of the two countries, managed to bring Pakistan to its knees. So for the Navy to come out and say, hey, you know what, we're deployed on the surface, under the sea, and in the air, is a very clear message that they're sending out to Pakistan, that we're, you know, it's not just the border we're talking about anymore. We're deployed across the board at this point.
Yes, and I think we should, you know, let our viewers know one other fact. You know, it's very, very uncommon for a TriServices joint briefing. I mean, even during Kargil, when there was a daily briefing that was happening in the South Bloc, the Foreign Affairs spokesperson used to be accompanied by one member of one of the armed forces. So
as it happened yesterday.
As it happened yesterday. They would, very rarely would you see, or probably never would you see all three sitting together. So it's very, so this is a very different
It's a departure from...
It's a departure.
Also, I mean, although it doesn't really matter, but for them to be addressing the media in this manner, where it's not in a controlled environment, it's not very... sort of services like.
It's not, and I think this was part of perhaps the optics. I think they just wanted to show we're out there, and you know, we're not confined to a room, we're out there in public. In fact, there is this whole regalia of Rashtrapati Bhavan and South Block in the background.
In the background. Interestingly, these are not the chiefs, these are their second in command, all three of them. So initially we were told the chiefs, the three service chiefs would, you know, would address a media briefing, which has almost never happened before.
It's never happened before. All three, not like this.
Not like this.
Not like this. But, and I think, I have a feeling that was also a bit of a strategic decision at some stage, that I think somebody realized that it's better you don't have all three service chiefs sit, because look, it was supposed to be a press conference. And in press conferences, questions can get asked, and sometimes, you know, for which there may be no answer. So it's not sometimes appropriate for the head of the organization to be not answering certain questions. So I guess...
Yes, and one journalist quite aptly said, you know, your statement was fairly cryptic, and the statements were cryptic.
Were cryptic, but that's to be expected. I mean, you know, the armed forces can't be speaking very openly. They don't hold press conferences very often.
At all,
So they're very reluctant, actually. In fact, the only, I think people they are slightly uncomfortable with is journalists in that sense, because they can't answer questions.
Well, let's look at some of the, what we can say are clues that were in the conversation. When asked, you know, do you trust that he will be brought back, and do you, you know, do you see this as peace? Are you going to de-escalate as a result? He turned around and he said that we see it as a gesture in line with the Geneva Convention.
Correct.
Which means that this is what Pakistan is supposed to do. They're not doing us any favors.
Absolutely.
So that's a very important
very
statement.
Important line, and it kind of completely demolishes what Qureshi was saying in the afternoon about linking it to, if you're interested in de-escalation, we will send him back and all of that. So they're basically saying, boss, this is something you're supposed to do in any case.
Yes.
So there is no favor.
So don't expect anything from us.
Don't expect anything from us.
The second point he said, but when a journalist asked him about again Wing Commander Abhinandan, he said, we are very happy that he's going to be brought home. We'll be happy when he comes home. When he is handed over to us, then we will make further statements.
Absolutely.
So again, there is a certain amount of, you know, yes, Pakistan has made that announcement, but there is, you know, some mistrust there.
Mistrust, and also lack of trust on the way they can always say something or do something else. And also they absolutely ensured that there was no display of undue excitement or happiness. Life is business-like. It's very business-like. That once he comes to us, we will see how much or what happens. Because usually when a prisoner of war returns, there is a very long, detailed debrief that happens. So he's put through a debrief where he's asked all kinds of things that have happened there. So obviously, how well they treated him or not is a decision that can only be taken once you've spoken to your man directly. You can't rely on some second-hand or third-hand information.
The third point that I do want to bring up is the Balakot evidence of the mission accomplished at Balakot, at which point the Air Force said that obviously we have evidence to show that the mission was accomplished, the targets we had in mind were hit, but it will be the government's decision on when and how they want to release that evidence.
Absolutely, because look, it's very obvious that a strike of this level would have been videographed by a plane. Also, there are these cameras which are there in fighter jets where the trajectory of the bomb and other things are captured. I mean, there is a remote capturing process that happens in every plane. So those avionics are available. So obviously, all of that is available. And much like what happened in Uri, the political leadership takes a decision on when to release that kind of an evidence.
The evidence that has been provided to the media, again, this is very unusual. Very unusual. For a piece of ammunition to be held up like this in front of the media. It's an Amram, a part of an Amram apparently that can only be flown on an F-16, proving that Pakistan did in fact use F-16s. The Air Force also said that the Air Force has the ability to read the electronic signatures of various aircraft and be able to tell which aircraft is flying into our space. This was in fact an F-16. How important is this? Very important.
And actually, Amram is actually a missile that Pakistan purchased just about, I think, 10 years ago. It was part of the F-16 package. And Amram actually is installed only in the F series. So F-16, F-19, F-23, they are installed only in that. And when you acquire a plane like F-16, the Amram missile comes as part of the ammunitions package that you buy alongside. So they had taken an order of 500 such Amram missiles. And there is absolutely no doubt that Amrams are only carried by the F-16. So their whole claim that the plane has not been downed has completely been demolished because it's obviously there.
The question obviously that we are going to ask now is about de-escalation. Was there any suggestion at all that India is anywhere close to de-escalation? Didn't seem like it at all.
No, they didn't. I think this question did get asked, and they indirectly, and they kind of said very clearly that, look, our job is to ensure that our borders are safe, the citizens are safe, and we will do everything possible to ensure that. And all three services are united in that, whether it's sea, land or air. So they didn't quite get into this terminology of escalation and de-escalation. I think that's more of a political terminology. For an army officer, for a services officer, they will obviously not use these terms. I mean, it's not about this escalating and de-escalating. Their job is to protect the country, and they will do it to the best possible way, depending on the level of threat. The level of threat right now is high, and hence they are at forward positions. They've put their mechanized divisions on standby. And that means they are in absolute 100% readiness to move at a short notice should Pakistan try something more adventurous.
So what, according to you, was the biggest takeaway from this press conference, other than the fact that it was an unusual press conference? What was the message that India is sending out right now?
Well, messaging actually is one of the big messages in that sense. The decision to put the three services together in a public press conference in the evening is in itself a departure. I mean, they could have issued a statement and not done anything publicly, and that's actually a big one. The display of evidence is again meant to drive home the point on how repeatedly Pakistan or habitually lies about things. I mean, they keep pretending and claiming things, even in a situation like this where there's incontrovertible evidence. And I think that was one of the points that the services wanted to suggest, that they keep lying, they keep denying, even as they level charges and allegations against the others. The other big message was that the Indian armed forces have sent a message across that we are not relenting on anything. We are there, we will continue to be there. We have kept everything that we have at our command on standby, and we are ready at a very short notice to come back and repulse you. The third takeaway, the big takeaway is they have officially and on record confirmed that Pakistan attacked our military installations. Remember, the last statement came from the MEA. This has now come from the army.
Yes.
They also confirmed that they dropped their payload within the Indian military compound. So the target was Jamnagar in that sense.
Yes.
And they did drop that payload within the compound. Obviously, it didn't damage anything. So that is now our armed forces confirmation.
If we can play out some of the sound bites from that press conference, which if our viewers have just joined us and they want to listen in, this is what the Air Force statement was for today.
Pakistan Army first resorted to unprovoked ceasefire violations, as you are aware, in Sundarbani, Bimbar Gali, Naushera and Krishna Ghati sectors on 26th February. With effect from 5 o'clock in the evening and again during the night. This was responded to by the Indian Army in a befitting and appropriate manner. As my Air Force counterpart has elaborated, on 27th February 19, the Pakistan Air Force attempted to target our military establishments in J&K. Specifically, they targeted a brigade headquarter, a battalion headquarter, our defenses, and a logistic installation. However, given the high level of preparedness along the line of control and the immediate and punitive response given by our own forces, the Pakistan Air Force's designs were foiled. I wish to assure the nation that we are fully prepared and in a heightened state of readiness to respond to any provocation by Pakistan.
On 27th February 2019, at around 1000 hours, Indian Air Force radars detected a large package of Pakistan Air Force aircraft heading towards the Indian territory, towards general area Jangar. They breached the Indian airspace west of Rajouri in the Sundarbani area. IAF fighters, including MiG-21 Bison, Sukhoi 30 MKI, and Mirage 2000, were tasked to intercept the intruding Pakistan Air Force aircraft. The Pakistan Air Force aircraft attempting to target our military installations were intercepted by the IAF fighter aircraft, which foiled their attack. Although PAF bombs have fallen in the Indian Army formation compounds, however, they were unable to cause any damage to our military installations. In the aerial combat that ensued, one F-16 of Pakistan Air Force was shot down by an IAF MiG-21 Bison aircraft. The F-16 crashed and fell across the line of control in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The IAF lost one MiG-21 in the aerial engagement, and though the pilot ejected safely, his parachute drifted into the Pakistan-occupied J&K, where he was taken into custody by the Pakistan Army. There have been many factually incorrect statements that have been made by Pakistan. The first blatant disinformation was that 2 IAF aircraft were shot down by Pakistan and 3 pilots of Indian Air Force were down. This figure was later revised downwards to 2 IAF aircraft and 2 pilots. The fact, however, is that Indian Army units had reported sighting 2 parachutes falling in POJ&K, which were of 2 F-16 pilots, the aircraft which was shot down by the MiG-21. Secondly, Pakistan claimed that they intentionally dropped weapons in open space where there was no human presence or military posts. The fact is that Pakistan Air Force aircraft targeted military installations. Pakistan also stated that no F-16s were used in the operation and no Pakistani plane was downed by Indian Air Force. There is enough evidence to show that F-16s were used in this mission through the electronic signatures, and thereafter the Pakistan is trying to hide this fact. Also, parts of Amram air-to-air missile, which is carried only on the Pakistan F-16s, was recovered east of Rajouri within the Indian territory. IAF has also learned that Pakistan has announced that Wing Commander Abhinandan will be returned to India tomorrow. IAF is happy and looks forward to return of Wing Commander Abhinandan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Indian Navy is deployed in a high state of readiness and remains poised in all 3 dimensions: on surface, undersea, and in air, to deter, prevent, and defeat any misadventure by Pakistan in the maritime domain. I can assure you of a resolute, swift, and strong response by the Navy when needed. We stand as one with the Army and Air Force to ensure the safety and security of our nation and our citizens. Jai Hind.